Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that might seem simple at first glance, but it's actually loaded with hidden depths. Choosing a domain name. And it's a domain name. We're talking about one that's optimized for search engines, aka SEO friendly. Our expert is here to help us navigate this digital landscape. We're using an SEO-friendly domain name by Adam Reimer, published just a few days ago on October 29th.
What's fascinating about domain names is that they're often the very first point of contact between your brand and potential customers. It's more than just a web address. It's a crucial part of your online identity.
Right. And in the article, Adam Reimer talks about how even seemingly small details, like using a plural versus a past tense in his domain name, had a real impact on his coffee shop business. It just goes to show that there's a real strategy involved.
Absolutely. A well-chosen domain name can be a powerful asset, boosting your SEO and brand recognition. But a poorly chosen one can actually work against you.
Okay, so let's break this down. Imagine we're starting from scratch, building a brand new website. What are the essential things to consider when picking a domain name for the first time?
First and foremost, you want a domain name that accurately reflects your brand and is easy for people to remember. This might sound obvious, but it's surprising how often people get caught up in trying to be clever or cram in too many keywords, ending up with a domain name that's impossible to spell or remember.
Oh, I've definitely seen some head scratchers out there. Like, how am I supposed to remember that jumble of letters?
Exactly. Keep it simple and straightforward. Avoid hyphens, numbers, and overly long names. Think about it. You want something that's easy to type into a browser and share with others. Word of mouth is still powerful, even in the digital age.
Makes sense. And then there's the whole TLD issue. .com, .net, .org, and even things like .shop or .online. Does the TLD really matter that much?
It absolutely does. The TLD, or top-level domain, can influence both your SEO and how people perceive your brand. For example, some TLDs, like .edu and .gov, are restricted to educational institutions and government organizations, respectively.
So anyone seeing a .gov or .edu website automatically knows it's a legitimate organization.
Right, and because of that inherent trust factor, these websites often find it easier to build authority and attract high-quality backlinks. It's like they get a head start in the SEO race.
That's interesting. So just by having a .edu or .gov TLD, you're already signaling trustworthiness to both users and search engines.
Precisely. Think about it. If you're searching for medical information, are you more likely to trust a site ending in .com or one ending in .gov? That inherent trust translates to a powerful SEO advantage.
That's a great point. It makes you realize how much these seemingly small choices can impact your website's visibility. What about some of the newer or less common TLDs, like .io or .co? Do those carry any particular weight?
They can, but it's a mixed bag. Some, like .io, have become popular in certain industries, tech startups, for instance, but others might carry the risk of disappearing or being associated with less reputable websites. It's important to research carefully and consider the potential implications.
Okay, so we've got the basics. Keep it brand relevant, easy to remember, and be mindful of the TLD. What other traps should we watch out for when brainstorming domain names?
One thing to avoid at all costs is hyphens. They might seem like a way to create a multi-word domain name, but they actually make it harder for users to remember and type correctly. And from an SEO perspective, search engines often see hyphens as word separators, which can dilute the relevance of your keywords.
So no hyphens. Got it. Any other outdated tactics we should be aware of?
You might remember a time when everyone was using the number 1 in their domain names, like bestdeals1.com. That was once a tactic to get noticed in online directories, but is now considered outdated and can even harm your rankings.
Wow, that takes me back. It's amazing how much the SEO landscape has changed over the years. You really have to stay on top of things.
Absolutely. Speaking of staying current, there's a simple but crucial test you can use to evaluate your domain name ideas, the say and type test.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. What's the say and type test all about?
It's all about ensuring a smooth user experience. Say your domain name out loud to someone. Can they easily spell it and type it correctly after hearing it just once?
That's a great point. I've definitely struggled with websites that have names that sound similar to other words, or just plain difficult to spell. It's frustrating.
Exactly. And Adam Reimer actually shares a personal story in the article about how he had a similar issue with his own domain name. He had 2 websites, one in the plural form and one in the past tense, and people constantly mixed them up.
Wait, you had 2 websites for your coffee shop. How did that happen?
It seemed like a good idea at the time, but it created a lot of confusion. People would try to go to one website and end up at the other. It got so bad that it actually started hurting his business.
Wow, that's a real cautionary tale. It really highlights the importance of testing your domain name out in the real world.
Absolutely. Don't assume that it's easy to understand and remember just because it makes sense to you. Get feedback from other people to make sure it passes the say and type test with flying colors.
So far, we've been focusing on choosing a brand new domain name, but what about situations where you're considering using an existing domain name, one that's already been used for a different website? That seems like it could be a whole different ballgame.
It is. There are many more factors to consider when evaluating existing domains, such as checking for backlinks, traffic history, and any potential penalties associated with the domain.
So it's not as simple as just finding an available domain name and calling it a day.
Not at all. Buying an existing domain can be a bit like buying a used car. You might be getting some great features and history, but you could also be inheriting some hidden problems.
Like what kind of problems? What should we be on the lookout for?
Well, for example, the previous owner might have engaged in some questionable SEO tactics that got the domain penalized by search engines, or they might have attracted a bunch of bad backlinks that could hurt your rankings.
So you could end up inheriting someone else's SEO baggage. Oof, that doesn't sound fun.
It can be a real headache to clean up, but on the other hand, if you find a domain with a solid history of good backlinks and relevant traffic, it can be a huge asset.
Okay. So there's a lot to consider when it comes to existing domains. We're going to need to unpack that a bit more. But first, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back to explore the ins and outs of navigating the world of pre-owned domain names. All right, we're back and ready to dive into the world of existing domains. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous after that used car analogy. Where do we even start when it comes to figuring out if an existing domain is a good investment?
It's all about due diligence. You want to thoroughly investigate the domain's history before committing to it.
Okay, so let's talk history. What are the key things we need to examine when evaluating a pre-owned domain?
One of the first things to consider is whether the domain's past content and the SEO efforts that went into it align with what you want to do. For example, if the domain was previously used for a website about gardening, it might not be the best fit for your new online shoe store, even if it has some great backlinks.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want all that gardening SEO juice pointing to your fabulous shoe collection, so
Yeah.
relevance is key.
Absolutely. You also need to think about redirecting the old domain to your new website. It can help you keep some of that SEO value, but you need to be strategic about it. If the old content isn't relevant at all, it might not be worth the effort.
Redirecting. That sounds a bit technical. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. Imagine you're moving houses, and you want all your mail to be forwarded to your new address. That's kind of what a redirect does. It tells search engines and users, hey, this old website has moved to this new location, and it can help preserve the SEO value of the old domain.
So it's like ensuring that your website's mail is delivered to the right place, even if it was addressed to the old house.
Exactly. And speaking of SEO value, one of the main reasons people purchase existing domains is for the backlinks they come with.
Okay, backlinks. Those seem to be all important in the SEO world. For our listener who might not be an SEO guru, can you explain what backlinks are and why they're so valuable?
Think of backlinks as votes of confidence from other websites. When a reputable website links to your site, it's like they're saying, hey, this website has good information, you should check it out. Search engines see those backlinks as a sign that your website is trustworthy and relevant, which can boost your rankings.
So if you can acquire a domain that already has a bunch of high-quality backlinks, you're basically getting a head start in the SEO game.
Exactly. But, and this is a big BUT, you need to be careful about the quality of those backlinks. Not all backlinks are created equal.
That's interesting. I guess I always assumed that any backlink was a good backlink. What makes a backlink bad?
The backlinks from spammy websites, link farms, or websites that violate Google's guidelines can actually harm your SEO. It's like having a bunch of shady characters vouching for you. It doesn't exactly inspire trust, right?
Yikes. So it's not just about the quantity of backlinks. It's about the quality. How do you even know if a domain has good or bad backlinks? Do you have to go through them one by one?
Thankfully, there are tools available that can help with that. Tools like Majestic SEO or Ahrefs can analyze a domain's backlink profile and tell you which links are beneficial and which ones are potentially harmful. It's definitely worth doing your homework on this before committing to an existing domain.
That's good to know. So we've covered backlinks and the importance of relevance when it comes to an existing domain's past. Anything else we should be scrutinizing before handing over our hard-earned cash?
Traffic. Analyzing the domain's existing traffic is crucial. It can tell you so much about the site's audience and how well it's been performing in search results.
That makes sense. So where do we start with traffic analysis? What are the key metrics we should be looking at?
First and foremost, you want to make sure the traffic is relevant to your business goals. If the domain was previously used for a website about, say, antique dolls, and you're selling software development tools, that traffic probably will be very valuable to you.
Again, relevance seems to be a recurring theme here.
Absolutely. You also want to look at the volume of traffic. Is the site attracting a decent number of visitors or just a trickle?
Yeah.
And where's that traffic coming from? Is it mainly organic search, meaning people are finding the site through Google searches? Or is it coming from other sources,
Yeah.
like social media or paid advertising?
So ideally, we're looking for an existing domain that's already pulling in a good amount of organic traffic from people who are genuinely interested in the topic.
Exactly. And you also want to see if the traffic is consistent. Are the visitor numbers staying steady, or are they all over the place? Big fluctuations could be a sign of seasonality or other factors that might impact your business.
It sounds like we're playing detective here, trying to piece together the story of this domain and see if it aligns with our vision.
That's a great way to put it. You're looking for clues about the domain's past to determine if it has the potential to be a valuable asset for your future business.
Okay, detective hats on. What other clues should we be searching for in our domain investigation?
We need to talk about something a bit more serious. SEO penalties. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth diving a little deeper. Remember, an SEO penalty is basically Google's way of punishing a website for violating their rules.
And this penalty can impact a website's ranking in search results.
Absolutely. It can result in a website being pushed way down in the search results, or even disappearing from Google entirely.
Ouch. That sounds pretty bad. What kind of things would cause Google to slap a website with a penalty?
All sorts of shady SEO tactics. Things like keyword stuffing, which is basically cramming your content with irrelevant keywords, buying backlinks to artificially inflate your authority, or participating in link schemes, basically anything that tries to manipulate the search results. Think of Google as a strict teacher who really values honesty and authenticity. If you're caught cheating, you're going to get penalized.
That's a good analogy. So how do you even know if a domain you're considering has been penalized in the past? Is there a way to check its permanent record?
There are a few ways to investigate. One sign is a sudden and dramatic drop in traffic. If a website was ranking well for certain keywords and then suddenly vanishes from the search results, that could be a red flag.
What else should we be on the lookout for?
You can also use Google Search Console, a free tool provided by Google, to check for manual actions. These are basically notifications from Google that they've manually penalized the site for breaking the rules.
So if there's a manual action listed, that's a pretty clear indication that there's been some shady business going on. But what if there are no manual actions? Does that mean the domain is in the clear?
Not necessarily. There are also algorithmic penalties, which are applied automatically by Google's algorithms. These can be trickier to detect because there's no direct notification.
So it's like getting a secret detention. You know something's wrong, but you don't know exactly what you did.
That's a good way to think about it. To spot these algorithmic penalties, you need to carefully analyze the traffic data, looking for any sudden drops or unusual patterns. And you can also use tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush to examine the backlink profile for any red flags, like a sudden influx of backlinks from suspicious websites.
So we've got our detective work cut out for us, but it sounds like it's well worth the effort to avoid inheriting a penalized domain.
Absolutely. Cleaning up a penalty can be a time-consuming and costly process. It's much better to do your homework up front and make sure you're not inheriting any SEO skeletons in the closet.
Now, let's talk about something even scarier than SEO penalties, hacked websites. Let's say we found a domain we really like, and everything seems to be in order, but then we discover it was hacked in the past. Is that an automatic deal breaker?
It depends on the severity and timing of the hack. If it was a recent hack and the website was severely compromised, it might be best to walk away.
Why is that? What makes a hacked website so risky?
Hackers can inflict a lot of damage. They can steal sensitive user data, inject malicious code that can infect visitors' computers, and even redirect the site at spammy or dangerous content. It can be a real mess to clean up.
That's a nightmare scenario. So even if the hack was dealt with and cleaned up, there's still a lingering risk.
There's always a chance the website could be targeted again, especially if vulnerabilities haven't been fully addressed. It's a bit like owning a house that was previously burglarized. You might take extra security measures, but there's always that nagging feeling of vulnerability.
Okay. I'm getting the sense that with existing domains, it's all about carefully weighing the risks and benefits. There's a lot more to consider compared to starting with a fresh domain.
Exactly. You need to assess your risk tolerance. If the domain is otherwise perfect for your business and you're willing to take the necessary steps to secure it, it might be worth the gamble.
So what kind of extra security measures are we talking about here? What would we need to do to make sure a previously hacked domain is safe and sound?
First and foremost, you need to ensure that the website is running the latest security software and that any known vulnerabilities have been patched. It's like updating the locks on your house and reinforcing the windows.
Makes sense. What else?
You'll also want to be extra vigilant about monitoring the site for any suspicious activity. This includes regularly checking for malware, keeping an eye on your website traffic for any sudden spikes or drops, and being very careful about who has access to your website's backend. It's all about proactive security.
Okay. So it's definitely not a set it and forget it situation. You really need to be on top of things when it comes to website security, especially with a domain that has a history of being hacked.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check for potential PR issues.
PR issues.
Right.
A domain name can have a reputation just like a person. What kind of things should we be looking for?
Anything that could negatively impact your brand. Did the previous owner have a customer service scandal? Was there a controversial blog post that went viral for all the wrong reasons? You need to do your research to make sure you're not inheriting a PR nightmare along with the domain name.
So it's like buying a house and finding out that the previous owner was a notorious neighborhood gossip. You might have a great house, but you've also inherited a lot of baggage.
Exactly. You can use online tools like the Wayback Machine to see how the website looked in the past. And a simple Google search can also reveal a lot about the domain's history and any potential controversies.
All right. Final question on existing domains. Let's say we found the perfect domain name. It's passed all our checks, and we're ready to make it ours. But we already have an existing brand and website. Do we keep this new domain separate, or do we try to merge it with our existing brand?
That's a strategic decision that depends on your specific goals and the overall brand strategy.
What are some of the things we should be thinking about when making that decision?
First and foremost, consider brand consistency. Does the new domain name align with your existing brand identity? You wouldn't want to create a disjointed or confusing experience for your audience.
Right. You want everything to feel cohesive and professional.
Exactly. You also need to think about your target audience. Does this new domain name appeal to the same people who are already engaging with your existing brand? If you're trying to reach a completely different demographic, it might make more sense to keep the brands separate.
So if we're selling luxury handbags with our existing brand, and this new domain is all about budget-friendly travel tips, it might be wise to keep them as separate entities.
Exactly. And don't forget the practical implications of merging two domains. It can be quite complex, especially if both sites have a lot of content and backlinks. You'll need to carefully plan the transition to avoid any negative impacts on your SEO.
Okay, so merging domains is not something to be undertaken lightly. It requires careful consideration and planning. I think I'm starting to get a clearer picture of how complex this whole domain name game really is. It's more than just picking a catchy name. It's about making strategic decisions that will impact your brand and your online presence for years to come.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing process. Even after you've chosen your domain name, whether it's a brand new one or a pre-owned one, you need to monitor its performance, protect it from security threats, and make sure it's aligned with your evolving business goals.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this topic, but I've already learned so much. But before we move on to the wrap-up, let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. We're back, and I'm still processing all this valuable information about domain names. It's amazing how many factors come into play.
It really is a multifaceted decision, and sometimes, even after all that careful analysis, the most unexpected choice can turn out to be the best one.
Ooh, tell me more. I love a good surprise ending.
Think about it. Sometimes a domain name that's a little more creative or unexpected can work in your favor. It can make you stand out from the competition and pique people's curiosity.
Right. It's like a book with an intriguing title. You just have to pick it up and see what it's about.
Exactly. Of course. You have to strike a balance. You want to be creative, but not so obscure that people can't remember the name or figure out what your brand is all about.
It's like walking a tightrope between creativity and clarity.
Precisely. But I think the key takeaway here is that choosing a domain name should be an enjoyable and creative process, not just a tedious technical task.
I like that. should be a chance to really think about your brand, its personality,
Hmm.
and how you want to present it to the world.
And who knows? You might even uncover some unexpected insights about your brand that you hadn't considered before.
Well, I think we've given our listener a lot to ponder today. Choosing a domain name is clearly a decision that should be approached with both strategic planning and a sense of adventure.
Absolutely. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. What works brilliantly for one brand might be a disaster for another. The most important thing is to do your research, weigh the pros and cons, and choose a domain name that feels right for you and your business.
If our listener wants to delve deeper into the topic, would you recommend revisiting Adam Reimer's article on Search Engine Land?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to master the art of choosing an SEO-friendly domain name.
I'd say this deep dive has been incredibly insightful. I feel much more equipped to tackle the domain name decision now.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you and our listener.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of domain names. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a new and intriguing topic. Until then, happy domain hunting.